Identify your opponent's weak spot and strike hard beyond its threat. Follow through the strike.
So we are talking about the movie iBOY, directed by Adam Randall and stars Bill Milner and Maisie Williams, who you may know, of course, from Game of Thrones. Now, this is a Netflix original movie, and is kind of a superhero movie or a vigilante movie in the same kind of lines as Spider-Man in a lot of ways, but with a kind of millennial edge to it. So basically, Spider-Man for millennials. Now, it actually reminds me a little bit of another kind of vigilante movie that I saw recently called Boy Wonder. Now, the difference with this one is the story here is this young guy who's a bit of a kind of a bit of a loner. He's got this kind of female friend in Maisie Williams' character, basically, and she is raped one night. He kind of walked in on it and is shot in the head while he's kind of trying to call the police. And bits of his phone end up in his brain, and this kind of gives him superpowers. Yes, it's a silly superhero origin, but, you know, let's be honest, being bitten by a radioactive spider is none less silly. Ultimately, what he is able to do, he's able to kind of intercept communications from pretty much any kind of electronic device, and then ultimately able to control them to a certain degree. And he uses this to try and clean up his neighbourhood, getting revenge on his kind of the rapists, and ultimately kind of going up the food chain to a kind of drug overlord. So that's pretty much your story here. So what do I think about iBOY? So I actually kind of quite like this film. It does remind me of a very much like kind of a typical kind of superhero trope. I will say this, if you're not from the UK, you may struggle to understand the kind of the accents and the kind of lingo here. It's very much kind of using kind of urban street slang. So I feel if you're from America, you're going to need subtitles of this one for the most part, I think. And the issues I had with it, this movie takes some extreme leaps in logic, both in terms of the story, obviously kind of just having smartphone giving you superpowers, and sort of decisions and choices that the characters make within the actual movie itself. There's kind of huge kind of leaps in logic and how people come to certain conclusions and things like that, which ultimately detracts from the movie a little bit. Also, Maisie Williams' character is more or less just kind of wallpaper here. She doesn't really do anything until the kind of like the last kind of like 10 minutes or so of the film, just more or less just kind of in her room, and understandably so, I guess, if you're a rape victim, but her character doesn't really feel like she's kind of integrated in the plot all that well. It does kind of play with some typical kind of cliches and stuff like that. But on the positive side of stuff, I actually found this movie quite a kind of a fun sort of spin on the kind of the superhero genre, and a kind of almost like a somewhat kind of unique way of doing kind of superhero powers, and the fact that this guy is not a like physical brawler, although there was kind of like one sort of scene where he is learning martial arts a la kind of like Meteor Man, if you've seen that. Technology to kind of get the kind of the bad guys. There is just one thing. I mean, in the initial rape scene, we see that they're actually videoing it. I mean, why he doesn't just upload that to those social media and just say, this is what happened to me, and ultimately they would have got arrested, and that would have been the end of it, I guess, but that's just maybe me overthinking it. I actually kind of quite like the characters here. I quite liked Bill Milner, I think his name is, as the kind of the main guy here. I think he was kind of like that typical kind of Peter Parker type. And I did quite like his relationship with kind of Maisie Williams and stuff like that. I maybe would have liked to see more kind of like interaction with maybe adults, maybe the police and stuff like that. But ultimately, I have to say, this was still quite an enjoyable film. I kind of quite like the visual representation of all this kind of technology kind of going up, even though, yeah, it's a bit silly. And I've got to say, it's nice to see a kind of a British kind of take on the kind of a superhero genre. Overall, it's a bit of fun. I don't think it's particularly a deep film, but I'll give this movie a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.